All right, here we are with a very special edition, Warrior Poet Podcast. I believe this is number 12, lucky number 12, coming just a few days after 12, 12, 12. This is the fourth 12, though, so it changes the double beast to the quadruple beast, which means nothing at that point. So I think we fully neutralized it with this, the 12th Warrior Poet Podcast. So for any of you out there, if you've been having weird shit happening to you after 12, 12, 12, know that in listening to Warrior Poet Podcast 12, you've added the fourth 12.
And everything's going to be okay.
Everything is good at this point. So I'm here with my friend, good friend, Donald Schultz, one of the craziest motherfuckers I've ever met. So we'll get into some of his antics later, but a pleasure to have you here, man. Glad to have you out here in Austin as well.
Well, thank you so much. So it's the first time to Austin. I'm a huge fan of Texas and just the States as a whole. So coming to Austin was a huge treat, and it's beautiful. I mean, the weather's kind of crappy now, but it's been beautiful the last couple of days.
Yep, absolutely. All right, if you want to get a little closer to the mic or bring that up a little bit more.
Is that better?
Yeah. Now we're talking. Right on. So you came up here. You were planning on doing some a little bit of base jumping. We're hopefully going to get that on camera. Yep. But that seems to be kind of one of your main things that you're doing right now. So how'd you get into that?
My big thing is I'm scared of only a select few things. And growing up, I was scared of horses, I was scared of heights, and spiders. And spiders always stayed with me, and I still hate spiders, but I work with the deadliest spiders in the world for venom research and that, so I actively seek out spiders. Horses, I ride all the time to try and get over that. And the heights, I was like, well, skydiving. And the very first time I skydived, I'm like, okay, I want to base jump. Because skydiving is just like a video game. Base jumping is real. You're standing on top of a building, you're standing on a cliff or over a bridge. There's no one telling you yes or no. It's just you. It's very, very pure. They're very pure. And the idea is like a lot of these messages that we have oftentimes are hard to get across. So you do something fun and exciting, get people in, and then convey the message to them, whatever that message may be.
It seems that, most people when they have a fear, they don't go straight into it. And I understand that a lot because I actually had an experience like that as well. But most people just run from it, like totally. My girlfriend is a perfect example of that. She's scared of spiders. And, I keep telling like, look, it's going to be good for your spirit and character and soul if you get over and conquer this fear. Especially because it's largely irrational. I mean, she's not afraid of black widows and brown recluses and, face-eating, jumping tarantulas. She's afraid of, like, just little house spiders. And so it's like, you got to get over that. You got to get over any kind of irrationality in your brain. But it's not the instinct. So how is it? Is it just, your epigenetics, your DNA, your character? What made you want to go straight into your fears?
I think, one of the most freeing things that ever happened was my dad died when I was really young, and I didn't really understand what happened. He died of a heart attack when I was 17. And obviously losing your dad's a heavy thing. And then looking at his family, his dad died very young of a heart attack, his mom of a heart attack, his twin brother, his sister. And then when I hit 20, I was like, fuck, I'm going to die young. If I don't change my behavior or if I don't do anything,
I'm going to die young. So let's do the most dangerous shit possible to make sure that I have the highest chances of that.
The thing for me was like growing up and being, growing up poor and not having a lot of opportunity, I'm like, well, let's just, sort of make it until it falls apart. And that's kind of what we did at first. We'd go out and catch snakes with no, backups, no anti-venom, no real plan if we get hurt, just hoping for the best. And usually the best worked. And as it went into other things, it was just like, don't assume tomorrow's going to be there because it's not. And, you're living right now and do what you do and that's it. People who live these 80-year lives that are blasé and vanilla, it's not for me. I'd rather have a short, eventful life than a long, uninteresting one. So that was it. My dad dying was me like saying, okay, well, we're all going to die. Screw it. Let's just go balls out. And that, was true in diving. I'm a commercial diver, dived in the military and the police. Certainly with skydiving, base jumping, and then definitely with reptiles, I'd do things no one else wants to do because I was just like, well, fuck, if you die, you die. It's all going to happen. I'd rather have a noble death than, one that's not so good. Yeah.
Right. And there's a great feeling about going into your fear and conquering it. I remember there was a rash of shark attacks in Florida, like maybe it was 10 years ago. And,
Summer of the Shark.
Yeah. It's a bunch of them. Like there's crazy stories like the uncle jumps out and like grabs his daughter's arm out of the shark's mouth, and there's all kinds of stuff. So I'm in Florida, and I have a cut that's still kind of open, and it's not really healing well. And I was like, I don't want to go in the water, and sharks, and I got a cut, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, fuck it, this sucks. I'm in Florida, I'm in fucking Key Biscayne.
Yeah.
I want to get in the water, and I want to swim. Like, that's what I'm here for. So I like picked a buoy, and it was like a cloudy day, murky. I know the sharks like the murky stuff. You're from South Africa. We'll talk more about sharks maybe, but I know the sharks like the murky stuff. So I was like, I'm swimming all the way out to that buoy and back with my bloody arm.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to get over this. And that way I can just play in the surf where it's relatively more safe.
Yeah.
And so I did it. I started swimming, and it was a weird, cool feeling to get out there. And obviously I didn't get eaten. But then when I got back, you know, I was like, all right, now I'm fine. Then I could just do my normal stuff and play around in the water, and I was over that fear. And I think that's important, you know, to kind of push through those fears and realize that, you know, I had a saying that I came up with then: either master your fears or let fear be your master.
Exactly, and that's a huge part. And sharks were a fear of mine too, but I came, you know, sort of overcame it early on when I was doing a lot of commercial diving. But that's a rational fear. Now that's like people, okay, well, sharks can't eat people. What's irrational is the media and how they represent it. That 10 years ago, the summer of the shark was interesting because sharks didn't spike. The shark attacks didn't spike. They only spiked in Florida. Media was having a low time. They didn't have anything to report on. So all of them were like, oh, sharks are coming straight for us. Statistically, over the last 100 years, shark attacks have stayed the same, even though the population has quadrupled. So it's bullshit. Sharks aren't attacking us. Like 99% of the world's sharks are gone. So it's like there's a huge drop in shark numbers, but the press gets hold of it. They're like, they're coming straight for us.
Right.
I was a cameraman in Shark Week for 2 years, and we'd take 2,000 pounds of chum, like salmon, not crappy chum, like actual Atlantic salmon, where it's like fatty and like beautiful.
Yeah.
Throw that in the water to get the sharks to attack us. Other than that, they wouldn't do anything.
And
like
what kind of sharks are you talking about here?
Tiger sharks, lemon sharks, great whites. Like the only way to get great whites to come in is to lure them in. We'd shoot for 10 days.
Attack your cage, right?
No, attack us. I mean, we just...
Wait. You're trying to get great whites to attack you.
Well, we were, it was Survivor Man, Les Stroud. I was a cameraman on his Shark Week special a couple of years ago, and we were filming tiger sharks, and we wanted to get them, and yeah, sharks are smart. They're just, you know, big sharks aren't stupid. They don't get big by being stupid. So when they look at you, they recognize you, they see you, and when you're underwater, they'll look, they'll be like, not interested, or they get interested and they come back, and the only way to get them in is either to have them attack you by surprise, which is impossible for filming, or you get them to come in with tons
and it's generally a bad idea, I would think.
It depends on who it's attacking. I mean, we got a guy attacked by a shark for Shark Week. We put chainmail on, a wetsuit over, put a piece of fish on the inside of his leg, and then filmed that with fake blood, and actually had a real person get attacked by a shark, and I filmed it. I was like, well, that's pretty cool.
What kind of shark?
It was a reef shark, but it was still 8 feet long, and it was big enough to shake him around.
Now, I mean, wouldn't you think that even with the chainmail, the pressure of the jaws could do some damage?
Once you get past about a certain size, then yeah, it would turn the flesh into spaghetti underneath the chainmail. And you know, knowing these things helps when you getting someone attacked by a shark, you know, rather than figuring it out in the job. But yeah, I mean, in shooting Shark Week, the most misrepresented animals in the world. They have no beef with people. Like, you can be actively bleeding in the water. They got no interest in you. The people that do get attacked, that's sad. You know, it is sad, but it's for the amount of human beings.
It's a more case of mistaken identity usually than people target. They think you're a SEAL. That's why surfers get attacked so much, right?
And that's why, yeah, exactly. And you know, even that happening, you know, Southern California from San Diego to LA, there's only been one deadly great white shark attack in the last whatever, because they just leave people alone. And there is a nursery in Malibu. That's where great white sharks give birth. It's the only place in the world that we find baby great white sharks. They live there, and no one gets attacked.
That's terrifying.
It is terrifying, but they're there. That's the thing, is now they're starting to take photographs of these white sharks breaching with surfers, and everyone's like, well, sharks are coming straight for us. It's like, well, no, we actually going straight for the sharks. And the sharks have always been there.
Right.
Yeah.
Man,
sharks.
I think the thought that's so terrifying of sharks for most people, I guess for you might have a different perspective. You've been in their world enough that you feel almost like a kindred species to a certain degree. You've dove, and when you're diving, for anybody who hasn't, you know, been diving, it's a lot different than snorkeling. Yeah. Snorkeling is like walking on the outside of a fish tank. You know, you're very aware of your limitations in breath and having to stay on the surface. Sure, you can, you know, scamper down to the bottom and then have to come right back up. But scuba diving is a different animal. You know, you really feel like an aquatic creature for, you know, the most part. You're down there with the fish, and it's a different level. And I guess doing as much diving as you, maybe you have even more of a feeling of that.
I feel like scuba diving, when you're on the surface, is the scariest part for sharks, even on Shark Week, because that's where you have the whole, I look like a dolphin, I look like a seal, I look like something that the shark eats. You know?
Right.
So being on the surface sucks, absolutely. Once you go underneath, it's a whole different world, and especially with sharks, when you know where they are, it's a lot cooler when you sneaking up on the shark, not the other way around. Because sharks don't often see you, and sometimes if they do see you, they'll swim away. So if they don't see you, you can sneak up on them, and that's fun. You give a shark a fright. And then one of the things that we used on Shark Week was a rebreather. So that's what the military used and I dived with in South Africa, and it doesn't give off bubbles, so it's silent. So you can sneak up on other animals. Like usually with scuba, it's like underwater with rebreather, it makes no noise, and so you can sneak up on fish. So when you're filming them, you can film straight up. You don't have bubbles when you're filming next, and they can't hear you. And that's where when we were diving in Fiji, you'd swim up next to a shark and turn around, and it actually gets a fright and swims away, which is then they're not so scary. Then they seem cute.
Right.
So
cute sharks.
So yeah, and that's the thing. Phobias. Find a phobia. I find something that I'm scared of. Basically dissect it, try and understand as much about it, see it's not that scary. And then the stuff that still is scary, then I just try and carry on going until I got no interest in it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between actual fear that's irrational. The fear is useless. You should try and conquer all irrational fear at all times, relentlessly, without mercy, conquer that fear. But there's also danger. And I think you cross into a lot of areas where it's not just conquering your fear. You're actually placing yourself in a certain degree of danger. Like, what did you do that time where you put yourself in a box of deadly snakes? Let's talk about that.
Well, as I said, I try and use interesting content to, elicit interest and then change. I was filming a series for Animal Planet, and we traveled around the world. We went and researched anti-venom in Sri Lanka, and while we were there, we noticed no anti-venom, second highest amount of bites of people in the world. And then, they just forgotten about it. So I thought what would be interesting is live in a box this big, literally the size of your office, for 10 days on the Vegas Strip.
So for people, that's like, what, 20 by 20?
I think it was exactly 20 by 20 with a shower and a toilet.
Yeah.
All with glass so people could see in. So the shower and the toilet was frosted glass, but they could still see my silhouette. So I went into poo.
Why? I mean, at that point, Donald, why not just give them a real show? Why frost the glass, buddy?
Well, it was Animal Planet, and they're like back and forth on the stuff.
You're just an animal, man. They make the fucking chimps put on pants?
Halfway through, I wanted to start flinging poo in that, animals shouldn't be in cages. And the most interesting thing for that, so I lived in a box. 10 days, 100 snakes. We started with 50, added 5 each day, including black mambas, forest cobras, rattlesnakes.
You put Kobe Bryant in there with
every single 2 black mambas, actually. 2 green mambas, 2 black mambas. And the idea was to show the snakes don't want to attack you. So in this cage, living with snakes, no problem. After about 4 days, people in Vegas realize what's happening. So every night, drunk people come and then yo, do something, catch a snake. Yo, are you sleeping? I'm like, yeah, I am actually trying to sleep. Because every day we were filming during the day and sleeping at night. So the crew would peace out. And literally for the last 3 nights, drunk people kept me up. So 3 nights of no sleep. And then we had to catch all the snakes in the cage and put them in bags to leave the cage. Because the cage was built on the Vegas Strip outside Caesar's Palace.
Right.
In full view of the public. So we did that. The last snake I picked up, basically it was a puffer that held it like that, exhausted, and its fang went into my thumbnail. I was like, fuck, that's exactly what I didn't want to do, to have a snake bite showing that snakes are friendly. Luckily, no venom, got out, was perfect. We raised funds for anti-venom research. We raised...
So your thumbnail acted as a buffer.
Yeah, exactly. There was venom on my thumbnail and a scratch from the fang. So I was like, that was close. And we didn't make a big deal out of it because I didn't want to get all that negative press. But so we did that. It aired 5 days later on Animal Planet for 2 hours, called Venom in Vegas, and got massive worldwide acclaim because people are I'm not scared of snakes anymore. And to this day, I'll be in a bar or something and be like, you're the guy that lived in the box with snakes, right? I'm like, yeah, I've done other things, but yeah, thanks for that. I was in West Hollywood peeing at a urinal.
Which is equally as dangerous as living in a box with snakes.
And the guy walks up to me, he's like, I enjoyed Venom in Vegas, and I'm standing there with my penis in my hand. I'm like, I don't have any snakes with me now.
Oh, and he's like,
except for
one. Yes, you do. You have a snake. I can catch it. I can catch it with my mouth.
And I was like, I thought it was funny. I don't have any snakes with me now, except for one. And he's like, and he walked away. I'm like, that's as funny as I get. And that
was your best line.
Yeah, right.
Were you trying to conquer your homophobia as you conquer other fears?
I got no homophobia, man. I love the gays, man. I grew up in South Africa with a bunch. My mom was friends with a bunch of prostitutes and gay guys, people that were ostracized by the community, back in apartheid South Africa. And I didn't grow up knowing any like, because racial stereotypes and racial hate was so big in South Africa, like, my dad and my mom just were like, you need to just treat everyone the same. Rich, poor, black, white, gay, lesbian, everyone's the same idiot. It's just, how they present themselves. And that stuck with me.
So how was that? I mean, growing up when did apartheid lift?
In 1995, Mandela came out of prison 92. So I was in high school.
And so you were in high school. So you were 16, 17 when that happened. So you spent most of your entire youth living in that
apartheid regime, I mean, and like state-sponsored hate. Until 1993, it was against the law to have a relationship with a black lady or black man if you were white. It was called the Immorality Act.
And did that not incite people to want to do it?
Oh, absolutely.
Good stuff. They wouldn't make this shit illegal unless it was good. Let me get some of that.
Exactly. And the funny thing is,
so stupid.
And we faced civil war. We were like facing, like, it was full-on civil war. People were like, okay, this is going to descend into anarchy. And then it didn't. And Nelson Mandela came out and he's like, yo, like, leave the whiteys alone. Let's all be friends. And everyone, even the white racists, were like, what?
Yeah, weird.
And exactly. And that's why the whole country works. And now since then it's gone a little bit African crazy, but that's just how Africa goes. People, grab money and it's all sorts of trouble that happens. But the actual change from apartheid to democracy was amazing. And Israel's, studied it for trying to use the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where they said, if you tell the truth and tell us everything you did, you won't have any charges laid against you. But if you withhold anything and we find out what happened, then we will charge you. So it's full on truth. Like, you come out, you tell all your secrets, you don't go to jail. And that's how South Africa got over all their problems.
So who is given that? The politicians were given that?
Everyone. As long as it was politically motivated, it was fine. Murder, rape, any of that. As long as you came out and you had to go and they'll call hearings and your victims would be there and everyone. And the craziest footage I remember, and like it changed me as a person, was a guy who blew up a whole bunch of people, and the mom of one of the guys that was blown up was there hugging this guy who was the bomber and forgiving him. And it was black and white. Multiple times it happened, but like black and white on both sides of the coin. Black victims, white victims, black, perpetrators, white perpetrators. But each time, you had these people crying and hugging and emotional.
How much ecstasy did they have to put in the water supply to make that plan work?
And that's the thing, is like South Africans, both sides of the race divide, black and white, are passionate and physical people. Civil war is fun, and that's what everyone was thinking. It's like, they're going to civil war, there's no way to stop it. And everyone hugged and made up, and that was it. So
crazy,
right?
Crazy. And it's things are pretty good there now? way
better. The only thing that's gone down is the current president is allegedly corrupt. So he's building like a 250 million rand, which is like $100 million house for himself with like a bunker and a hospital and all that, while people are still starving. So like that's where the divide comes. But that's African countries for you. That's often what happens, no matter what the leader is. It's just cronyism, and I guess it happens in America too, to a certain extent.
Yeah, as much as they can get away with it. I mean, it's just they can maybe get away with a little more. In Africa. So what do you think? And I've been to Africa. I spent some time in Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania. Man, it's a big task to try and get a lot of those things kind of straightened out and helped. I mean, what's your view on that? All the aid that comes in, it seems like it's not being used in the right way, because what I experienced there is that a lot of the best and brightest people in Africa, and there's plenty, a lot of people going to school, really smart, very articulate. They weren't trying to start businesses. They weren't trying to do anything in politics. What they were really doing is writing the best grants, and just creating programs to siphon more money in. And it seemed like that's like the easiest way to get money and get ahead in Africa, is to go after the grant money rather than kind of try and build something. And obviously that's not everybody, but that seemed to be one of the issues. So what do you think, what do you think the world should kind of pay attention to for Africa, being an African yourself?
One of the big things that people don't realize is America, funded and financed a lot of what happened in Africa. And then when that financing ran out, people were like, okay, well then Africans will just take care of themselves. And that certainly didn't happen. And now there's a lot of finance coming from Chinese. And the way it works, and this comes back to endangered wildlife and all that. The way it works is a lot of like Chinese companies and Chinese nationals and that will go to a country and say, okay, well, you don't have any hospitals, schools, or roads. We'll build that, but we want your mineral rights. Or you build that, we want your fishing rights. And the locals are like, well, we don't have anything, so yeah, of course, go for it. We don't care what's in the ocean. We don't even have boats,
Right.
And so, like, Mozambique is a good example. We go and you sit on the coast of Mozambique and you can count 50 longliners, and they're catching dolphins, sharks, turtles, all the fish,
catching dolphins,
everything,
assholes,
everything. Exactly. Fuck you, dolphin. And it's like basically taking everything out of the ocean. And the Mozambicans don't know anything about it. And by the time that it gets to points of legislation, it's already too late. We were filming a shark episode down there, and they fin sharks. So they catch them on a hook, pull them up, cut their fins off, throw them back in the ocean.
For fin soup or whatever,
yeah,
right?
which it's no nutritional content, it's no benefit, it's purely an ego thing. You have shark fin soup when you're trying to impress friends.
Well, I guess there's cartilage in there, but you can get that from fucking anywhere, gelatin of some sort.
Exactly, and it's all like, and the bigger the shark, the more expensive the fin, the more rich you are. You know, like it's total bullshit. So sharks, you know, section them mature at 16 years, live for maybe 50, we don't really know, and these guys are cutting their fins off just for one meal. So that's
and the shark dies.
Shark dies, and it doesn't die right away either. Like sometimes they'll survive for a week because they can't swim. So they're like basically now sea slugs laying on the bottom of the ocean, starving to death. And like that, and we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of sharks per ship. Now we're talking about like worldwide 450 million sharks a year. Like that's huge. That's why shark numbers are going down. So I said to the Mozambicans, I was like, well, why don't you just go out there and chase them away? Like, oh, once we went out there, we shot rounds at them to chase them away, and they, like, blank rounds, and they pulled out real AKs and started shooting at us, and they're like, fuck that. Sharks aren't worth it. And like, that's what's happening with Africa. You know, a lot of people are investing money, taking away all the stuff that we think is important, the environment, the animals, the minerals, things that we need, like depleting them and moving on. And you're going to have African countries that are like just ridden hard and put away wet because they were just neglected by Western society. That being said, Africa doesn't need money. It needs people.
Yeah.
Giving an African money doesn't do anything else than give him, you know, food for a day or a week or whatever. Teaching Africans skills and going back to Africa is a huge, big thing for me. And, you know, taking people back and making them happy and seeing how important Africa is to the whole world. Because it's not just full of Africans. Like, there are inventors and pioneers and, you know, development going on there that with a little bit of money would be huge.
Right. All right, so let me back up real quick for people who don't understand. Well, some people might be like, oh, man, fuck the sharks anyway. It's always trying to fuck with us, you know? So the problem with killing all these sharks is, as I understand it, correct me, obviously you're an expert in the area, you kill the sharks eating some of the larger predatory fish, you know? And so the larger predatory fish have no predators to keep them in check. So because there's so many more of those other fish like tunas and other things like that, then they start eating all the little fish, right? So the whole food chain gets jacked all the way from the top by removing the apex predator from the chain. Is that really?
That's the long and short of it. Other than the fact that, you know, if you hate sharks and say they serve no purpose, or if you just hate sharks as a person, that's fine. They still serve a purpose. We did some research and we found that sharks, even if they aren't eating animals, just the idea of a shark, like the shadow of a shark in the sky, makes other animals breed less because they have that predatory, like, they have something over them that's bigger and scarier. So they still sneak around, even if it's a nurse shark that doesn't eat fish. Just the silhouette of a shark, they'll sneak around and like live in the shadows. As soon as that shark silhouette is gone, then they're like, screw it, I'm the big fish, and they come out. So even if it's not actively predating on a fish, just the shark in the ecosystem is enough to keep the ecosystem under check. Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, so then to go back, just wanted to clear that up for people to understand, but then to go back to Africa, so many people are like, oh, you know, we got to help Africa. We got to help Africa. I'm like, you know, your cause is noble. Your heart is absolutely in the right place. But how you're going about it is, you know, you got to take a look at that. Because just, you know, throwing some money toward a kid in Africa, you know, really when you actually track those dollars down, just a fraction is going to that actual kid. Most of it goes to the organization and the commercials that got you to buy it and the executives. And I'm not saying that all organizations are like that, but there's some good kind of watchdog websites that you can check out to kind of see how much money is actually getting there. But then even the money getting there, it's a resource that's not doing anything. It's not putting that money to work. So if someone wants to get involved and say, you know, fuck, you know, I really want to help out Africa, it's a dire situation, what would you recommend to them? Just your average, everyday person.
The funny thing, and this is going to sound like a sponsored message because I do eco-tours and that, and the reason I do eco-tours is for this reason. Every 7 people that go to Africa gives an African a full-time job for a year. And that trickles down. And the difference is if you give, and I have major issues with some of these, like, you know, fund organizations, just like you do. And one of the major issues is if you go to Africa and you see someone that needs money, you can give them $5. That for me is huge. And then also the trickle down from the tourism is huge. It's massive. That's what stabilizes countries in Africa. You know, diamonds and that it's a destabilizing force. Oil is, you know, look at all the countries that have oil, diamonds, and gold, usually at war. So that's the big thing. I'd say visit Africa, see for yourself, and you know, if you see someone who needs money, give it to them. Like seriously, like that's my take home. The other part of that is if you're into animals and you're traveling to a reserve or something, going there and empowering the locals to be pro-conservation versus pro-hunting is what saves animals. I worked with Jane Goodall, and that's how she saved the chimps, is basically by saying, okay, they're not bushmeat, but you can also make money from showing like tourists where the chimps are, and that's what saved gorillas and chimps. Literally, that was it. Not guns, not anti-poaching things. It was people going out there and then changing the mentality of the locals. The same thing with Africa. If we give them money, I'm not saying them, if we give Africans money, like as governments and that, they're just going to want money. If you say, okay, well, here's an industry where you can make way more money than anything else, make that safe and renewable, then everyone's environment wins, animals win, we win, the Africans win.
Yeah, and there's also some successful microloans kind of charities and things that I know you can get involved there.
Yeah.
Going back to the conservation thing, so one of the craziest things I've seen you do a lot of crazy things. You send me videos all the time. I have to post some of these so everybody can see what I'm talking about. But it's this video, and you're huge into rhino conservation. It's a major issue. A lot of rhinos are being poached, similar to the shark fin soup. They're cutting off their horn. They're making some kind of, what are they doing?
It's supposed to be either aphrodisiac and
big horn.
Yeah, exactly, big horn. Or,
big dick.
The other big thing is it's supposed to cure fevers, and it's like, really? It's like, fever's the scourge of our time. Like, is that really as bad as, like, you have to kill a prehistoric, essentially prehistoric animal for a fever? So those are the two things. Shark fin soup is status, rhino horn is aphrodisiac and fever, and now elephant tusks. I got an email this morning. They just found a container full in Malaysia from Togo. Elephant tusks are chopsticks.
For a huge, giant sumo Asian. I mean, how do you...
so they take the elephant tusks, they cut them into little blocks of wood, and they ship the wood to China, and then they'll make anything out of them. But the big thing now is going back to ivory chopsticks. That's the big...
some kind of staff, some like gator shoes.
Exactly.
Gator boots.
And like, if elephants were abundant everywhere, that's fine. I'm okay with killing animals to conserve them. I know it's a hugely controversial thing, but you can't save everything. You have to save species, and like that's where I get pro that. But now, with the way the economics are going, Asia's got more money, Africa's got less, supply and demand. Suddenly people who couldn't afford elephant, rhino, and shark now can. The demand's just skyrocket to the highest amounts of elephant, shark, and rhino poaching in the last 25 years has happened this year.
So, and those numbers are just increasing.
Last year, 444 rhinos were killed. This year, over 600. In one day, in one town in South Africa. And this is South Africa.
That's like a 33% increase. That's unsustainable if that growth keeps going. There's not going to be... How many rhinos are left?
20,000 in Africa. Last year, 2 species went extinct. And both of them... Well, one of them was Asian. It was a Vietnamese rhino, which one of the big demands is. So that's logical. And then the other one's a North African rhino. So 2 species are gone forever.
Yeah, and no dicks are any bigger.
No,
and nobody is getting more pussy because these rhinos are gone, and that's a fact. And I can verify that. I can put the On It Labs stamp of approval on that.
And the funny thing is, like, speaking to you about these projects, it's hard to get corporate sponsorship for them because some of this content's pretty heavy. I approached Pfizer and said, "Hey, buy us a 4x4 for anti-conservation, for anti-poaching and conservation in Africa. We'll put Viagra on the side." And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Come on. You make the product that could save this animal. We want you to get the vehicle that will save the animal." I'm like, and you're Pfizer. Like, it's not like you don't have money.
Yeah, it's silly. So anyway, this video, Donald sends me this video, and it's a pretty emotional video that shows you're rolling out with a local team. What country are you in?
South Africa.
South Africa. So rolling out with a local team, and you're kind of tracking down some poachers, and you come across a field where rhinos have been. Their horns have been taken off, and they're just left for dead there. And it's a really kind of emotional scene for you to kind of roll up on this, and for the viewer as well. You keep following the track and come up on the actual poachers, and you're kind of following. It looks real guerrilla style. Got your cameras rolling. All of a sudden, shots ring out. Whap whap whap, like high velocity rounds coming over. You guys hit the deck, and at that point in the video, you're like, "Oh shit! oh shit, this just got real.
Yeah.
This got real as fuck right now.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, we're being shot at again.
Yeah. So your dudes drop down, but some of your dudes have AKs.
Yeah.
And these other dudes pop up and they start whack, 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 sending shots back at the poachers who are shooting at them. And then you roll up and you capped one, killed him.
Yeah, the full that's the sizzle. The full story was we killed one guy. My take home message was that, like, do you want a gun? And I said no.
Yeah.
Because if there is a problem down the road, I don't want to even have a weapon because
Sure.
When we rolled up there, we were there for 14 days. We called the cops. We're like, hey, we are doing anti-poaching stuff. They said to us, don't call us unless there's a body. I was like, oh. And then when we went and found those dead rhinos, I've been working in Africa with animals for 34 years, like my entire life. And I've never seen a dead rhino. And then we go, they're lying to us, they won't let us near anything because they are law enforcement, but they're also poachers. They're like, no. We eventually weasel our way to where the dead rhinos are. We film them, and then we tracking these guys. We hide the footage. On the way out, those guys try and arrest us. And they say to us, if you go to jail in Nduma, which is northern Zululand, you won't come out the same. Meaning, you'll get raped, which is, obviously, but the HIV and AIDS prevalence up there is 50%. And it's called slow puncture, where they get someone with HIV to rape you, so that's like something you take home. And this guy's standing in the door of the car telling me this, and I'm like, He's like, are you a film crew? And we said, no. And in our 4x4, we open the back, and there's a giant magnet that says film crew with our telephone number. I'm like, oh. So after 2 hours of interrogation that they let us go, the only way we got the footage out, we took the footage out the cameras, put it inside of a base parachute.
Also known as your asshole.
Yeah, no. Well, that was the thought. I was like, because as we were driving out, I'm like, dude, I have a bad feeling. Like, I'm like, this has been too good. Something's going to go down.
So before this, though, we haven't gotten to the story where you rolled up on these poachers. I mean, this is after the poacher incident. So what happened? They see you coming. They're like, shit.
Yeah.
And they got high velocity rounds meant for poaching.
Yeah.
Right. Harder to reload. Yeah. So they start shooting at you.
Yeah.
Right. And you get bullets whizzing by you.
Yeah.
Then your dudes pop up, return fire, and then you roll up on them. And then what happens? Well, how was that scene? Because you just see a fraction of it.
Okay. So that whole scene, how it played out is it's a shoot to kill policy. Those guys had killed those first 2 rhinos. And they killed another 2. And that's what they actually, in the full episode, you see them hacking at the rhinos. And that's when one of the guys sees us and shoots at us. It's a shoot-to-kill policy on the side of law enforcement or property owners. So as soon as poachers see anyone, they just start shooting.
So you have a right, if you see a poacher and you're rolling around, you have a right to shoot him with the intent to kill him.
Yeah, on sight.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely.
Seems like a good deterrent, but people just aren't using that clause. If they put that shit in Texas, oh my God,
right?
There would be no poaching. People would be like, I'm going to get me a human. Right? I'm going to get me a human today. Come on, poach something. They'd be breeding extra animals and teasing people with them and genetically modifying extra large horns that glowed in the sky like unicorns. Magic just to pull poachers in. Come on, do it.
Yeah,
do it. Come on. But it's nobody's taking that up.
The thing is, it's once it comes down to economics. So the guy on the ground in Africa doing the poaching, often the bottom of the pyramid scheme, who's making or the top of the pyramid scheme, whatever, who's making no money. He's getting literally like $100 for it, for a horn that's maybe worth $100,000. So he's the bottom of the scheme, and those are the guys that you're killing, which makes you sad because they're just as trapped up as you are. But once someone starts shooting you, all fucking bets are off. They're not the UN anymore. Like you shoot at me, I shoot at you. That's the rules. So that was that. But in Africa, it's got so bad now that they're hiring ex-military guys to kill these rhinos. So they're using helicopters, they're using night vision, they're using veterinarians, so they don't even have to use guns anymore. They use M99, which is what Dexter uses. And they've had cases now where they use M99s at Torfine. They'll dart the rhino, cut the horn off, and the fucking rhino wakes up. And they'll find the rhino 2 or 3 days later with half of its face missing. There's one rhino in Johannesburg that's been poached 3 times. It's got 16 fucking bullets in it. It's a black rhino. It was poached. They cut the horn off. They recovered it. The horn starts growing back again because it's like basically like toenail, but they fucked its whole face up. It was poached again. They shot it again. They cut its horn off again. Brought it into like a private reserve, and then they shot it again just for spite. They didn't even try again. They just shot it through the fence. And now it's living at the Johannesburg Zoo. So these people aren't normal.
That's a gangster rhino. That's like the Rasputin of rhinos. Yeah, that's Spitty.
He walks with a limp and everything.
Yeah, he needs a record label.
Well, he lives in Johannesburg, so yeah. But I mean, that's the kind of people you're dealing with. It used to be a guy in the field with a gun and flip-flops and a machete. Now it's often, you know, ex-military guys from different countries in helicopters at night. So it's become a syndicate thing. It's being run like drugs. Last year was $400 million in rhino horns alone. It's ridiculous.
That's a lot.
It's huge. I mean, it's a huge industry. And the people who make the least money are the guys on the ground that would make good conservation officers if the industry was, you know, tourism-based rather than killing animals-based.
So go visit some rhinos.
Go visit anywhere in the world and do things that basically make people, you know, want to conserve the environment and animals.
Right.
Like, visiting zoos is cool, but if you can go to like a full-on reserve, that's way better. You often see less animals, but it's better for the animals, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So to go back, I don't think we quite finished the story. So you're getting threatened with being raped, slow punctured in the bunghole, raped with AIDS.
With AIDS rape,
as a little addition to the pleasures that you're about to receive in jail. You get threatened with that, and they're going through. What's going through your head right now? I mean, you conquer a lot of fears, and you know, you've pretty much mastered. But at that point, you got to be a little bit, oh shit.
The things that scare me are people in authority position drunk on power or just drunk.
Yeah.
Like, those are the two things. In Africa, oftentimes guys will pull you over and they have guns and they're drunk. And you're like, oh, fuck. And this is in the really remote places. And when we got pulled over, these guys are drunk on power. Where they're like, you know, like we could say they were fighting back or whatever. My cameraman was like, he's in the South African guy. He's like, let's just tell them we're making a documentary. I'm like, no. I'm like, these guys are the enemy. The guys we can tell we're making a documentary are their bosses, but they are, you know, far away. So let's just lie till now. And my other friend was a base jumping friend he was just with, and he hid the footage in the base parachute. So like when they searched our vehicle multiple times, they grabbed the parachute and they were going to open it. I was like, don't do that. There's a spring inside. It'll hit you in the face. And the lady was like, oh, okay, just put it down. That's how we fucking got the footage out. That's the only reason we have any of that footage. Then we spoke to, once we got away, we drove away, got back to Shushlui where we were staying, called the head and told him what happened. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're investigating. 2 days later, we found 2 of those guys were the poachers. The guys they had like M16s in our face, pointing at us, telling us to get in and out the car and searching our shit.
And you guys probably just capped their buddy.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, you know, you don't know who's involved or who's not. The private security firm we work with has a document with all the poachers, their addresses, the syndicates and all that, but you can't give it to the cops because the cops are involved.
Man.
So the only, I mean, it's a cute, and there's a book out now called Killing for Profit by a friend of mine called Julian Rodemeyer. It goes up all the way into the embassies. There's a Vietnamese diplomat that was bust twice smuggling rhino horn. He invoked diplomatic immunity both times.
And we're talking a lot of rhino horn.
Yeah,
we're not talking like one in a suitcase here. We're talking
and
like...
you're talking about $100,000. It's more valuable than gold. It's $100,000 for one horn that doesn't even weigh a pound. So these guys are making massive money, and he's a diplomat, so he's like, you can't do anything. Goes back to South Africa.
That's a lot more valuable than gold.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's ridiculous. And like he got bust, diplomatic immunity, carried on working, got bust again, and invoked it again, and then just left South Africans working somewhere else now. So that's the problem.
Well, you're raising awareness. You're bringing it out there. We'll post this video after the podcast, and everybody out there, you know, take a look and share it. Get the word out. And you're going with an unlikely character out there for the cause. You're going out there with Kesha here.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing about TV is the Kesha thing. We were trying to get a show going about conservation, and it seems like all the networks now don't want to show real things like anymore. Like, they don't want to do any anti-poaching, they don't want to do animal shows, they don't want to do anything with real guts because it's too much for people to handle. So like a lot of the stuff that we're doing now, we're releasing independently, so we don't have to water it down to become this generic mass TV model. So like the last show I did, we went to people's houses that have animals that shouldn't have them, try and take them away. It was with Clint Eastwood's daughter, Alison Eastwood, called Animal Intervention, except the animals are lions, tigers and bears, and all the animals are in the States. So like upstate Pennsylvania, tiger, a lady here in Texas.
There's gotta be plenty in Texas.
Yeah, Texas, a lady living in an RV with 4 monkeys. Like, we try to help her and all that. And
those are lovers. How dare you take those away?
And her husband. And like that show, they don't want to renew because it's too real. Like, people don't like seeing real stuff. So like the poaching thing, this documentary...
Well, on the internet they do. Just maybe the networks don't have the stomach for it.
That's the thing. And like this poaching documentary, I offered to give to a bunch of TV channels like National Geographic and Discovery and all that. And they're like, it won't rate. It's too real. It's like The Cove. It's like, it's too much of real stuff. So this has literally been, I've offered, usually you make a lot of money to make TV. I said to them, you can have it. And they said no. That's mainstream media.
That's the way it's going, though. I mean, the radio stations are giving way to podcasts, and the TV shows are going to give away to the webisodes and webcasts. I mean, it's just they can't keep control on this forever. You know? But in the meantime, working within the system, you're going to bring a pop star out there, water it down a little bit. Hopefully, Kesha won't get shot at, or depending on how much you like Kesha, we obviously don't want her to have problems. But it could be kind of cool to see her get shot at. Just to see a little. Whoa! Holy shit! This is real now. This is real. Yeah. All right.
And then the bringing it all back full circle to the reason I'm here is using interesting things to get people excited about this. We're going to do a legal base jump in Vegas on, I think, the 10th of January the 10th of January. We're going to do a legal base jump at CES. And while we are doing a bunch of jumps for you to make videos that we're like, hey, look at all this crazy shit we're doing, woo! And then people watch the video, and at the end, you're like, by the way, this is because of rhinos. And even if 1 out of 10 people take notice, it's still more than if you're just trying to get them with a Sarah McLachlan song or something like that.
Right. Yeah. You could jump naked, too, and that would help.
I'd get a girl to jump naked. It's way more. Even though that sounds good until you actually see it, the boobs never look as good in free fall. Like, they just become scrambled. Like, not scrambled, they just become very if they're small, they look good. They're big, then it's just like all over the place. And it's
just going to the armpits,
in the face.
All right, so let's talk about this base jumping a little bit. Another one of the crazy videos that I've seen, and you're jumping. I think it's Eiger, and which is a big cliff. You're base jumping off this big cliff, following a flight path, and as you're going, you see this outcropping of rocks coming up, and as you're watching, you're like, oh shit, Donald's gonna hit this thing, right? And you pass it, and it's just like not far away
from a couple feet, and then I turned left and flew down the ridge. Like that was flying over things is easy because you don't really burn altitude. As soon as you turn, you're burning so much altitude because you don't have an engine. Right. That was what I was trying to time perfectly. Is that I turned over the ridge. So
you started turning a little bit too soon.
No, it was actually perfect at what I did. If I turned too soon, it was
perfect because I just missed it by a foot.
Exactly.
You always that's the crazy mentality of a base jumper, ladies and gentlemen. You just heard it there. I was saying, oh, so you did it a little early because you cut it so close, but he was saying, no, that was perfect.
Yeah, a little early, we wouldn't be having something. And the interesting story behind that jump is the high Eiger that we jumped. It was jumped once before in a documentary with Dean Potter, and it took him like 5 years to find the exit point and all this stuff. And my friend Ian Flanders, who's a phenomenal climber, he's climbed El Cap, he's climbed Half Dome, he's amazing wingsuit and base jumper. He broke both his legs in March. We tried to recover him using Onnit stuff, and he's been militantly working out in that. 4 months later, after 2 broken legs, you got us the helicopter. We got onto the Eiger and we jumped a 7,000-foot wingsuit jump. And to see a person that I picked up 4 months before in a wheelchair at the airport that had to wait another week for surgery on his legs, to watch him wingsuit off of a mountain, I almost started crying.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that I was so fucking shit scared because we were on a 7,500-foot cliff. And the wind was blowing so hard that when we jumped off, we got blown off. Like it was a 30-knot wind from the back. So we got blown off the mountain. So I went head low, kind of like along the face, and then flew along the ridge and then down the glacier.
Yeah.
Which was...
So this video is going to be out soon too,
Very
right?
soon,
We're just doing a final edit on it, but that's going to be crazy to kind of take a look at. Now, we were talking yesterday... for people who don't know much about wingsuiting, you think it's like maybe a little bit of control, but it's a lot of control that you have. And you were talking about there's some people now who are able to fly up with a wingsuit, and this is really getting into bird type of shit at this point, able to fly up like a hang glider of some sort, and also slow their speed down. Talk about that and what the ultimate goal of this crazy endeavor is.
Well, the wingsuiting, like obviously everyone's seen Vimeo. Everyone thinks it's like, wow, that's like the best in the world, and it is. But wingsuiting is becoming so mass appeal that someone within 3 months can learn to wingsuit safely out of a plane, and if they want to progress, they can go on. And part of it is people are developing wingsuits that are better. Technology is improving. We understand more. Parachutes are getting smaller, so you got less of a drag. So the bigger the wingsuits get, the slower you can fly. So like, bigger canopies fly slower. So the wingsuits are getting so big now that last year a friend of mine got to 5 miles an hour forward and then 0 miles an hour down. So he was just going forward at 5 miles an hour. So if you've ever fallen off a bicycle or skateboard at 5 miles an hour, you know it's not such a big deal.
No.
Where he was trying to land, there was another cliff, which is his safety. So he could stall out and then fly off the cliff and keep flying. So he can basically see what his GPS was doing. He accomplished that last year, and this year, unfortunately, he died. Not doing that, but wingsuiting, proximity flying. There are 2 or 3 other guys that are getting to the point now that they're flying so slow that they think they can land without a parachute, which has been the holy grail for a while. A guy did it into boxes, like a stunt, but I think next year in Alaska, there's going to be a bunch of attempts for guys landing wingsuits on the side of snowy mountains where they just fly and match what an alpine skier is doing and just kind of fall out the sky.
I match what an alpine skier does when they fuck up and they crash.
Asses and elbows everywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. But now, for me, flying slow is not the key. For me, flying precisely is the key, and that often means flying really, really fast. So, like the wingsuits that we have are like the samurai swords. They don't fly slow; they only fly fast, but they can turn on a dime. So I could hit a tennis ball from a mile away. Like if you give me something to hit, I could hit it easily. Like I could turn around, and that's kind of what we're doing and what we're filming with you guys. The first time we jumped the Eiger, we did it out of the helicopter. The second time we jumped off the mountain. And the first time we jumped, we flew inside of a cloud for 45 seconds. That's what we're actually adding to the video now. And I'm flying next to the cliff face, and you can see the cliff face every now and again flash by. But I'm essentially in a cloud for 45 seconds, total whiteout. Can't see anything, and the cliff's just going over here. And I knew what the mountain looked like. I knew there was a glacier, so I could see the white. So I just stayed in the cliff. I mean, in the cloud, and flew, and you can see the cliff every now and again just flash past.
How long was your ride?
Minute and a half.
Man,
that's just a wingsuit jump. So when you jump, it's the craziest thing.
And with your adrenaline going that high, that minute and a half has got to seem like eternity.
And most base jump wingsuits, you jump, you fly, you open, you're like, oh fuck, and sensory overload. With this, I had time to start fucking around, and I looked between my legs back at the Eiger summit as I was flying away, and looked back. I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. And as you're flying in Switzerland, in the Alps, there's a train track that goes down. So depending on how good you are, there's a town called Grunz, and then there's Grunewald. So you jump off the Eiger, you fly down, you proxy fly for a bunch, and you fly down to the train track, and then you fly to whatever train you want to catch. So if you're really good, you catch the last train. If you suck, then you catch the first one. So there's like 4 different places you can stop. So you're flying over houses and trains and trees and shit, and looking where you're going to land. You feel like a superhero.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, and when you land, you're like, You're like, what now? And that was it. And no one has dreams of flying as skateboarding as a kid, or snowboarding or scuba diving. Everyone has dreams of flying. I mean, it's a very basic human thing. And this is one of the few things that I've done that the hype lives up to the action. Most people are like, oh, what's the greatest thing ever? You go do it. You're like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, like parasailing.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my God, really? Just put me down. This is lame.
And that's it. Wingsuiting has never, and it's like, people are like, well, you can die. Like, well, that's the trade-off.
Right.
It's the greatest thing ever, but the jeopardy is or death.
Yeah. So how does that, make you feel? And I guess there's 2 things I want to get at. One is, that's such an adrenaline dump at that point, and you finish and you're on that high. Is that the part that gets addicting from it? Is it that actual feeling of getting your senses that alive? I mean, what is it that makes people, once they do it, they just want to keep going after it?
There's new research now that shows that we are not adrenaline junkies. We're actually born with a dopamine deficiency. Mm-hmm. So we walk around, like you ask most extreme people who walk around, like, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? And most of them will say a 7, but most of them actually, when they get interviewed, will be a 5. Like they walk around at a lower vibration than most people. And then when we do extreme things, the vibrations picked up to like a 7. So like when we do something amazing, we're like, okay, cool, this is a good day. And then we're normal. So it's not like we operate a 7 and we hit 11 each time. We actually just, really mellow and then go to that extreme
state. So this is what it takes to get you
mellow. And that's the crazy thing. And that's why it's like such an addictive behavior, because you change your life, you change your behavior in life, because you're just trying to be on that vibration where everyone else is.
You're just a regular guy looking for happiness.
I'm just trying to be normal.
And you do it I'm just trying to be normal. I'm just hanging out in boxes of snakes and getting sharks attacking and jumping off cliffs and missing them by only a foot.
I mean, imagine how much it would suck if you woke up and you're like, wow, to feel normal, I'm going to have to jump off a cliff. Like that's what I deal with every day.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, base jump, like being on a base exit, right, and having 4 guys around you that could potentially die, right? Anyone could potentially die, but having 4 guys where the chance of death is 1 in 70, because that's the stats, I guess. It's 1 in 70 you have a chance of dying.
Is that a lifetime of jumping, or is that per jump?
Well, it's statistically a base jumper has 1 in 70 chance of dying.
Every time he jumps, or in his life?
In life, yeah.
Okay.
But that's depending on how long they do it. Most base jumpers' careers are 7 years. They die, retire, or get injured. 7 years, that's it. So like, if you look at it like that too, which is the way I did, it's like I got 7 years in the sport and that's it. Then you do what you need to do, and that's 7 years. I'm be like, if I'm alive, I'm like, okay, I'm out. That's
okay. How many years in are you?
3.5 now.
All right, so you're halfway there.
Yeah, and that's good.
It's like a tour of duty in the military,
right?
Except completely voluntary.
That's the thing. It's like going to war, except everyone's there of their own accord. And just like war, you come back. Some people are missing arms. Some people are dead. You know, you're not angry at anyone. It's just, but the difference is it's totally voluntary.
So what is your view of death, Donald? I mean, we haven't ever even talked about your spiritual beliefs or any of that. What is your view of death? What happens when you die? What is your take on it?
I think it's a dimensional thing, man. I really do think it's a dimensional thing. And I think base jumpers specifically and wingsuiters are one of the few people, and maybe people in the military, that are so okay with death it doesn't even bug them. And like, that's where that vibrating at different frequency comes in, because every single time you jump, you're killing yourself. You are dying until you do something about it. And like, that's, sometimes you succeed. You know, sometimes you really succeed at dying. But like, that for me is more important than what happens afterwards, is the fact that I'm okay with it. Like, everyone that's running around absolutely petrified of death, they get scared to live. Right. Like, that's it. Once you die, I think it's, you know, it's energy or light or whatever, but it's something that we don't understand, we can't wrap our minds around at this point. So I'm like, once I cross that bridge, I'll get to it.
Yeah, kind of like the Native American saying before they go to battle, you know, they always tell themselves, today is a good day to die. Or the samurais who, you know, walked carrying death as their greatest ally as part of their Bushido code. You know, I think there is something very freeing about that, because that is the most pervasive fear for everybody across the board, is fear of dying. You want to hang on to this life. I think for me, fortunately, I didn't have to get there by jumping off crazy shit. It was through the medicine, right? Ayahuasca and the medicine work. I mean, you actually experience a very physical death where you confront your death head on, and have to accept it, have to fully accept it before you can move on, and then you feel reborn. And at that point where you've accepted your death, that's a huge step to overcome. So for those people who don't want to fling themselves off a cliff, there are other ways to get there. But for me also, there was another experience I had. There was a psilocybin experience where I was able to actually lift out of my body completely. Like, my breath stopped. I mean, it would be really interesting to see if it actually stopped, but it certainly seemed like to me, like, I no longer was breathing, needed to, like, my whole body, my heartbeat went down to like the very base minimum. I'm sure there's like a little bit of oxygen trickling back and forth, but no like conscious at all. It was just like dead silence in my body. Nothing, no sensation, no feeling. I mean, way beyond isolation tank shit, like absolute zero in my body. And then I could feel my spirit lift off and look down, and I was like, oh shit, like that's not me. That's just the packaging. You know, that's just the package. Yeah, exactly. So at that point, you know, it totally shifted my view of death, and to one of, if I died now, it would just be a shame, because I didn't quite get to do what I feel like I was meant to do here. You know, I'm just like, damn, that sucks. I have to come back and try again and grow up and, you know, learn all the things I already learned, you know. And it would just be a shame. I'd be kind of bummed out. I'd be bummed out for the people who are alive that would miss me, you know, and hopefully, you know, tell them if I die, and I'm sure you probably have some, I just have a fucking big party. Like, don't be sad. Yeah. You know, it's a shame. Like, yeah, it's a bummer. Like, Aubrey didn't get to quite do what he wanted to do. I never got to write the book that I intend to write, or, you know, have the kids and do all that. But there's nothing really scary about it at that point, you know, and I think that's something that a lot of people could really benefit from, is just having no fear of death.
Yeah, and it's not a big thing to do. I mean, people say to me, "You're crazy." I'm like, no, and without being mean to them, I'm like, you're the one that's crazy. Like, you don't have a passport. You know, you've never traveled. You've never been scared. When was the last time you were actually scared? Not like, oh God, I'm late for work, but like actually like fucking shit. Like last year we got shot at in South Africa and Costa Rica, and that's like bulletproof coffee. It fucking wakes you up. You're like, okay. And one of the guys was shooting at our headlamps, and it's like that really like makes you focus on things. Yeah. And people, I'd say 99% of people aren't gonna die the way that they saw it coming. So what the fuck? You know, why try and conserve your life so aggressively if you're gonna die anyway? It may not be a good way way to die. My thing is I'm not reckless with my life. If there's a choice between doing something that I could potentially die in and something I'm going to die in, I'm definitely not going to do the thing I'm going to die.
You don't have a death wish.
No, and if I do die, I'm going to be like you, fucking bummed. Like, it's sad. Like, I didn't have kids, didn't do the book and all that. But that's not going to stop me from doing what I want to do. And, like, that's where, like, I'm trying to get people to understand 10 years ago, we would never ever swim with sharks. Nowadays, you have tours for fucking people down in the Bahamas where they go feed sharks out of their hand. The way we're progressing as a species, we have kids growing up now that only know what wingsuit base is. They don't go through skydiving. They don't go through all the normal channels. They just go straight for the Holy Grail. So they're starting where the pioneers of days are now. And they're essentially going to a place we can't even imagine. Just like skateboarding. You know, you have a 12-year-old kid doing a 900 on Mega Ramp where Tony Hawk didn't try it and Bob Burnquist only did one. You know, stuff
it's the same in MMA now. You got these little kids. You can look up on YouTube, little kids throwing combinations and takedowns. And you're like, that kid is 5. And he is an MMA gangster.
That's right. The commercial, the two kids beating the crap out of each other. And Rory McDonald's a good example too.
He's
a young kid. And he's like, he just picked up where the masters are now. And he just carried on building on it. So the way I see wingsuiting and all that stuff, it's going to progress fast. My joke is on Shark Week, you know, we've got to the point now where like the next thing that the American public wants to see is a person get eaten. Because we've done everything, right? We've done everything else. And like the way, the way that TV's going now, they want so much that they just, you know, they don't care about human life anymore. You know, they're willing, they're like, oh, if a person dies on TV, man. One of those things, you know, it's TV.
Certainly plenty of that on the internet. So as we're kind of wrapping this podcast up here, I wanted to ask you, you know, what does your fitness kind of regime look like for all this crazy shit that you do? I mean, you're going 1,000,000 miles an hour, but what do you try and focus on to get yourself ready to survive in these death-defying things, adventures?
Oftentimes, you know, the downside of what we do and what I do specifically, and like I know you travel a lot too, is traveling beats the fuck out of you. And I know it's not an excuse, but you sick so much of the time that like often supplements and that is the only thing. I feel like the immunity stuff that I take from you, it doesn't make me never get sick, but I think the times I do get sick, I feel a lot better, a lot quicker. And I haven't taken antibiotics in 2 years. I know like that's something I'm trying to avoid. After all the stuff that I've been through, monitoring my blood cholesterol levels with my dad dying, you know, like that's one thing that I check on. Try and work on cardio, try and work on whatever like I'm working on. Like at the moment, my shoulders are really fucked from wingsuiting and base jumping, so working on that. And then the hikes, you know, when you're in Switzerland for 3 weeks and you're hiking alpine environments and all that beats the shit out of you quickly, and you realize, you know, where you need work. Traditional big muscles don't really work in wingsuiting because they're so dense, so it's a lot more of like weird body position and that.
So like yoga? I mean,
not yoga. The one thing I'm actually starting to take up is bar method, which is a dance stuff because my girlfriend's a fitness instructor now. But yeah, lots of just cardio and when my ankle's okay, running in the gym and all that. But definitely not yoga yet. But bar method, which
What's that?
It's like ballet.
Yeah.
I swear to God. You should check it out. It's small repetitive movements using a ballet bar, but it's like it focuses on certain parts of the body. So like it with bad shoulders.
So more skeletal integrity is what you're targeting rather than a high degree of fitness or
the longest
cardio.
The longest base jump you'll do is 90 seconds. So it's very explosive in that moment, but a lot of it is also it's almost like swimming where you need to be calm and not strong. It's all about finesse and being relaxed and that rather than being like manhandling a wingsuit and then the wingsuit just doesn't fly. Yeah.
Right on, man. So you know, you've been taking some Onnit products for a while. This podcast is obviously, you know, made possible in part by Onnit. That's ONNIT.com if you guys aren't aware of that. So what are some of the interactions you've had with the Onnit products?
The funniest thing, and recent, like over the last year, it's actually been quite a bit, but 8 months, it's been a while. The last week, I was at a dinner party and a guy said to me, "Oh, have you heard of this stuff called Alpha Brain?" And I had a bottle on the table. I'm like, well, I'm flying to see Onnit next week. And he's like, dude, I went to Peru because of the Warrior Poet podcast and because of Aubrey Marcus. It changed my life. I did ayahuasca. I was like, I'm texting him right now. That kind of stuff is the stuff that you could never plan on, but it is amazing. And then the day-to-day things, like with my girlfriend being a fitness trainer and that, she uses the Shroom Tech, she uses the immunity, she uses Alpha Brain when she's in trouble. Like that kind of stuff's amazing. And seeing it with my girlfriend, she has no like axe to grind. If she's using it, it means it works.
Right.
For me, I think it's changed the way I do certain things. Like, you know, in the morning, it's like, do I need a cup of coffee? Can I use Alpha Brain? Like that kind of stuff's amazing. the interactions, obviously, Adam is a good friend of mine, base jumping, and I said, we're coming to see you. He just melted down. It's like, holy. And you're like, well, yeah. He's like, you know Aubrey? I'm like, yeah, actually, I do. And that kind of stuff. And then obviously the Joe Rogan, you know, as soon as you mention you, Joe Rogan, Alpha Brain, that all like comes together so quickly. It's like a, you know, new generation of people that are aware of the environment, their body, spirituality, and like, you know, not to fuck with shit. You know, let's not totally screw it up for the next generation, which I think is a good brand, you know, idea to have.
That's the main message. You just summed it up
really?
there. And I think that's a good way to call an end to this fine episode of the Warrior Poet Podcast. Donald, it's been a real pleasure to have you on board. If you guys, once again, always check out our friends across the pond at LondonReel.tv. They're putting out a great product as well, getting a bunch of cool guests on there. I heard they got Robert Greene on there too. I really want to listen to that. I've read all of his books except for the new book Mastery. So have you ever read any of Robert Greene stuff? Oh, it's killer. 48 Laws of Power.
What's he like? Which author is he like?
He creates these basically psychological and philosophical analyses based around a certain topic. So there's power, war, seduction, different things, and he just removes morality from the equation. So he says, okay, you want power, this is how you do it. We'll let you figure out your own morality. Yeah. And then he brings in all of these really cool stories from history and all of these examples. I don't know who's on his research team, but it's amazing. I mean, not only is philosophy good, but just the anecdotes that he uses to illustrate it are excellent. And you actually wrote a book with 50 Cent called The 50th Law, which is kind of a lot of his other stuff, but just kind of put in, you know, how it applies to 50s life and all that. But he just finished a book called Mastery, which I'm about to get in. But
interesting,
lots of good books out there too. People read books.
Yeah, and the one book that I'd say if they want to read something about the rhinoceros stuff, it's called Killing for it's Killing for Profit. It's like literally the whole syndicate and everything behind the rhino crisis, and how it's like now today actually they announced that it's a national security risk, the illegal wildlife trade, because terrorists are going and using that money to fund terrorist operations. So it's getting to the point now that caring for rhinos actually is going to impact people.
All right, so Donald, if people want to get in touch with you, if people want to reach out and follow you a little bit more, how can they seek you out?
The best is Twitter at Donald Schultz, DonaldSchultz. We obviously working with you this weekend, doing a bunch of fun jumps, which we'll only post in that once we leave the States.
Yeah, right on.
And then that's the most current thing.
And DonaldSchultz.com.
DonaldSchultz.com is the website.
Yeah, another one. All right, people, this is it for the Warrior Poet Podcast. Have a great fucking weekend. We'll catch up with you soon. Adios.